Hey, it's Dave from Cooking Something Good. I'm in a good mood today because why? Two reasons. One is the holiday season. Happy holidays, happy Kwanzaa, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, happy everything. And also, yesterday I had my colonoscopy and I wrote a little song, which I'm going to share with you right now while I do my little dance here. Ready? 3, 2, 1. My colonoscopy. Bump, bump, ba-dum, bump, they took a look at me. Yeah, put a tube up my butt. Bump, 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 and looked into my gut. And this is what they found. Everything's safe and sound. My colonoscopy. The prep, it sucked. That's my colonoscopy song. It's happy holiday time. Great show. We're going to look back all throughout this year, 2022, all our different shows. We'll put a bunch of different interviews together, a bunch of different recipes together. Thank you. We have passed the 100 show mark, 100 plus shows, and we can't wait till 2023. We're going to have some great things, including episodes with people just like you, people from our social media friendship clubs, and we're going to talk about restaurants and places you've gone, and recipes that you have. Bump, 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 bump. Oh, my colonoscopy. They took a look at me. My name is David D. It's time to start the show. Happy holidays, everyone. Bump, 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 bump. Doos. Bump, 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 do 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 do.
I mean, for meat heavy, this country's really meat heavy, and if you think about it, you really have to use, in order to gain flavor and reduce acidity in a dish that consists of meat, you need to use vegetables to draw all that up. So what do you think you're doing when you eat vegetables? You're drying the acidity out of your body.
Yeah.
So that's why they call it a good balanced meal. And one big reason why in Italy a lot of people live so long is because they eat a lot of fish and they use a lot of vegetables and a lot of things that permeate with, like bay leaf, things like that.
Now, all the things your grandmother told you.
There's no fast food out there, Dave.
Yeah, and I loved it. All the things your grandmother told you as a kid are now coming back into fashion.
Yes.
After all these fad, blah, blah, blah. And that's nice to see.
That's it, done. You do a little anchovy paste sometimes with the garlic. You let it melt in a pan, and you can throw some capers in there, some chili flakes. You could do like an aglio olio, which is garlic and oil based, or a little trace of tomato in there. And the olive oil really is what brings all the ingredients together.
Yeah.
It kind of helps the pasta. It helps the sauce stick to the pasta as well. So if using a base sauce with not a whole lot of olive oil in it, you're going to see that sauce kind of slipping off the pasta, and you're leaving your pasta white. Whereas if you use some extra virgin olive oil incorporated, when you're actually, when you're at home, you make it a pot of sauce, right?
Yeah.
Take another pot, and you want to toss the pasta a little bit in with the sauce just to get it on a plate, right?
Yeah.
So now if you actually turn the stove on, get some olive oil in there with those ingredients, you're going to notice that the sauce starts sticking to the pasta, and you get all that extra flavor on.
And that's where you want to use extra virgin olive oil. I see a lot of people cooking, frying with extra virgin olive oil.
Yeah, if you're fancy, you got that kind of money, yeah, fine. But you really don't need
it. What does it do? Does it help? No, not really.
It turns into grease.
Now, you obviously must take in fluids when you're riding. Do you take in food too, or is it just when you're actually racing?
So when I'm actually racing, even typically, unless it's a really hot day, don't even carry water. It's all about hydrating the previous kind of 24 to 30 hours before your race.
For an hour and you have no fluid?
No, because what we do is we really hydrate for the 24 to 30 hours before that race.
Yeah.
So our body, is hydrated, and then we can basically run it to depletion and throughout the race. Because you're running at absolutely max heart rate. For me, around 200 beats per minute for an hour. It's really hard to take down water, let alone food. So that's why the prep leading up to a race is extremely important. Now, on a training ride, yeah, I carry lots of water, lots of calories, lots of carbohydrates. But yeah, in a race, pretty much
Holy
nothing.
cow. I could never win a race because I'd fall asleep because I'd be up all night peeing. I mean, the
I
older
mean,
you get,
you
the older
got
you
to
get,
time it right, but
the older you get, it's a problem. Now, what kind of racing did you do? There's all different. People think of the Tour de France and my shirt. I can see myself, dun 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 dun. I'm gonna win this thing, and I can hear the music in my head. You know, if it was a documentary, dun 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 dun, David, do so, bum bum bum, and then I'd reach in my pack and I'd don't a sweat be pouring off, and I drink my water and bum bum bum. Is that the kind of is that a good example?
I mean, if you're watching a cycling documentary from the 80s, yeah, maybe. But I
Like
think no.
like
So
me
what I
from the
did
80s.
is, yeah. So what I did is what's called cyclocross.
Yep.
So I race some road, I race some mountain bikes. But I really specialize in what's called cyclocross. It originated in Europe. It's kind of a mix between mountain biking and road biking. You're on what looks like a road bike, but the geometry is a little bit different, has a little bit more aggressive tires.
What do you
And
mean
the
by
season
What do you mean by aggressive tires?
got a little bit more knobs on it. It's not a smooth, slick tire. It's more like a mountain bike tire, but kind of the size of a road bike tire, if that makes a little more sense.
No.
The season is from September through February.
Yeah.
So we are dealing with, extreme heat and dry temperatures, in the early fall, all the way to we're racing in snow and ice.
How cold does it get in some? I mean, is it sub-zero temperatures?
I mean, I've raced in single digits before. Yeah.
I think most chefs talk about their biggest influence being from where they came from, where they grew up. And I grew up on a small family farm in eastern Iowa. We raised dairy and we had pork, and then our neighbors had chickens, and we raised our own vegetables. And so that's kind of where I come from mostly, and sort of, being heavily influenced by my mom, of course. Like most chefs, I think it's like what you ate growing up is the most comfort. And so a lot of times I base things off of that, and kind of went from there. I went to culinary school up in Vermont at New England Culinary Institute that really focuses heavily on buying local and working with farmers, and sort of the importance of rediscovering these ingredients that are not mass produced and are not being able to ship, and just seeing like simple food like that, how much of a difference it makes when it's fresh, and when you're supporting your neighbors who are able to grow these things that maybe they can't put into a box and ship across the country.
Yeah.
And then I ended up in Boston after culinary school, and have been able to work for companies and work with people who have really sort of fostered that. Thank you. Have fostered that, those things are also important too. So we've been sort of blessed to be able to be in an environment that allows us to do that. So I see, especially with sort of intro level cooks in professional kitchens, especially sort of when you're getting into that point in your career when you're able to start designing dishes, is that I feel like the common thought is that more is better. The more complicated, maybe the more ingredients, maybe the more unusual the combination, it's more like sort of avant-garde and sort of like high-end, but that's not always the case. And many times it takes a lot more courage to sort of go with less and work with technique to let those ingredients shine on their own.
Because one of my favorite things in the world is mofongo. Can you tell our listeners who don't know what it is?
Well, mofongo we mix it up with mashed plantain. We mix it up with some call it chicharron, fried pork belly,
Yeah.
some garlic, some a little bit of adobo. So we mix it up everything together, and we make a really nice form. And we serve it out for any size we like: fried chicken, garlic shrimp, tomato sauce shrimp, whatever you decide.
Yeah, and
It's really good.
it's
People love it here.
really good. It's one of my favorite
We
working
try to,
people. Working class people are already at work at 8 o'clock.
yeah,
They've
yeah,
already.
because we have a warehouse real next to us, so we got it. They start working earlier. Sometimes they get up because that's 24 hours
Yeah.
warehouse over there. So sometimes they get out of work up. They say 5:30, 6 o'clock, 6 in the morning. So we open, so they just got some breakfast to take home before they go to sleep.
Yeah, it's perfect.
They go outside.
It's crazy. It's like some of the products that we're not allowed to bring into the U.S. because they've got a certain color in them or something again that the FDA don't like. But here they put high fructose corn syrup and everything. Hershey's put waxing agent in their chocolate.
Yeah.
Both those things are classed as unfit for human consumption in Europe. But here they put them in everything.
Corn syrup kills more people than cigarettes.
Yeah.
I can't back that up, but it kills a lot of people. That stuff
It
is
does build a lot of
killer.
people.
Yeah, I try to stay away from it, and it's not easy. You got to read the labels. I mean, there's corn syrup in everything, unless you really read the labels. And I'm getting
Apparently, I found out there's different levels of corn syrup. Because some of the things I sell do have corn syrup in, but they don't have the high fructose corn syrup, which is the bad one.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Great. Yeah. So when you're looking at your dog, they should have a nice tapered look to them. So the front half where the rib cage is should be a little bit larger. And then as it comes back to their back end, it should taper underneath. So you get a nice little, almost a curve shape. And then from the top, you should see a wider front that tapers in towards the back end. So if your dog is all one size, they're a little bit too thick. And if your dog goes in, comes out for the rib cage and goes back in, they may be too thin. So you should be able to feel ribs or see the last two. If your dog is very athletic, you might see the last two ribs, and that's okay. That's a good thing. If your dog is a pet, you should be able to at least feel the ribs, if not see the last two.
Yeah, and it's true. I see dogs that you can see the ribs and they get narrow in the back. Those dogs usually lickety split. Can run like the wind.
So you can work on things like handler focus and ignoring the environment. You can work on loose leash walking. You can work on having dogs disengage from something that's very exciting. And we have all these games. These are a great way. It's all positive reinforcement type games. But one example is as you're walking along and you have your dog next to you, there's the reward zone, which is basically that area when your dog is right next to your pants seam. Yeah. So if you want to teach a really nice heel, you can teach it without having to jerk on the leash or tell them heel a million times by just starting to reward only when they're in that position. So when they're right next to your leg, not when they're in front, not when they're in back, but when they're right in that little area around that pants seam, that's when you give the treats. And dogs are opportunistic. So they will learn that this is where I get all the good stuff and I don't get anything there and I don't get anything there. So they're going to start to naturally want to be in that spot. And if you're working on loose leash walking, as they're next to you and they look up at you, you can toss little treats to them and you can have them catch it. And then again, you're teaching them it's really rewarding to stand next to me and catch my kibble and catch my breakfast and be more focused on my person than what's going on around. So it not only helps you get your heel, get a dog that walks without having to pull on them or get dragged or anything like that, saving your shoulder from the PT. And it also helps them ignore what's out in the environment because you are way more exciting than the squirrel and the bird and the other dog and the other person.
And I went to Philadelphia, I'm going to say like maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And there's a guy who wrote a book called Mastering the Art of Pasta. His name is Mark Vetri. I wrote him this long email and I was like, listen, 4th of July weekend, I closed the restaurant. I would like to come down there and stage in your kitchen. So I go down there and stay at a hotel, catch an Uber to his restaurant. This guy is like world renowned. If you look up Mark Vetri, he owns restaurants. He's in Vegas, but his famous restaurant in Philadelphia. Yeah. So I go stage for him. He has a pasta room. I'm blown away because I'm just like, dude, this is it. I go in there, I have like a 9-course meal. Unbelievable. I go upstairs, I like make some fresh pasta. And I was making pasta at my restaurant, but I just wasn't at that level yet. I was still a newbie because a lot of times when you work for a chef, you kind of inherit what they do. But sometimes when you go into uncharted territory, you have to kind of figure it out. So I was reading a lot of books, whatever. So long story short, I go to Philadelphia. I work in his kitchen for free. I basically, I'm in this hotel get up in the morning, go, on my vacation. And one of the days, I'm working there, and I'm like, oh, will you do anything else? And he says, yeah, could you mop the floor? Now here I am, grown man, own my own restaurant, have 18 employees, head chef, and this guy asked me to mop the floor. So I stopped for a second, and I said, yeah, no problem. Where's the mop in the bucket at? And I mopped the hell out of that floor, Dave. I mopped that floor, Dave, like it was the love of my life. Because I said, you know what? There's strength in humility, and people don't realize that.
And he was testing you too, don't you think?
Of course. But at the time, people are emotional. People react certain ways. I could have been like, are you kidding me? I'm working for free. I own my own restaurant. I'm a big shot in my neighborhood. But I said, you know what? This guy was gracious enough to invite me into his kitchen. Mm-hmm. Give me information that I didn't have. And this guy's a legend. I look up to him. So I grabbed the mop, and I mopped it very, very, very good. And I explained that to my employees and the young chefs that are coming up. There's strength in humility. Before someone said, yes, chef, to me, I had to say, yes, chef, to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Hey, what's the secret? A lot of people love the barbecue, but smoking meat and getting it to be, burnt ends, but then moist on the inside. What's the secret to good barbecue?
I would say the secret to good barbecue is something my dad says not only in cooking food, but he also says it in life. And it's just kind of something that reminds you to be patient. And so, whenever something was in the oven and it wasn't done, and I would open the oven, I would hear my dad yell from across the room, "Don't touch it!"
You do a good,
and
Peter.
So that's kind of what I would tell people with barbecue is when you put it on, don't touch it. Let it do its work. The only way the smoke is going to penetrate the meat and start the process is time. And that's the only thing. I also tell people, when you're starting out in barbecue, don't go to the store and buy a 20-pound brisket as your first thing.
Yeah.
Because you're going to ruin it for yourself right off the bat. You're going to sit there for 23 hours straight, processing the things, getting it on the smoker, making your spouse or your partner angry because you're out on the deck all night doing it. And then if you sit down to eat it and no one can eat it. Or go to a local shop that, curates sausages or something like that. Sausages only take an hour 15 on the smoker, and you can get really good flavor. You can get really good color. So just start with something simple like that and put that on the smoker, and then build your way up to getting up to pulled pork and brisket and stuff like that. But for us, we put our meat on the smoker at 6 o'clock at night, and we don't touch it. We don't open the door for our brisket or pulled pork until at least 7:30 in the morning.
Yeah, so the brewing thing, to explain it simply, we're taking grains from the field and they're getting malted, and that's kind of just converting them a little bit into an ingredient that we can mix with hot water and kind of make like a mash, like an oatmeal, where you have this nice viscous mix, and what's happening is the water is activating enzymes in the barley and malt that are converting starch to sugar, the sugar being called maltose after malt.
Yep.
And then we're extracting that liquid into a boil kettle. That liquid is called wort. And then we're kind of steeping hops for a few different reasons. We're trying to extract some bitterness in the form of acids, and that's going to give balance to kind of the sweet brew that you have. And then we're getting flavors from the hops, which range from like earthy to piney to citrusy to tropical and stone fruit. And then you're also kind of getting aromatics from the hops as well, kind of ranging in those same descriptors that I just said. So after the boil, we're going to cool that temperature down and make it really friendly environment for yeast to kind of thrive in. And the yeast just love to eat up all that fermentable sugar, that maltose. And the byproduct of the consumption of the maltose is alcohol, which gives you your buzz. It also, alcohol adds like a very unique, nice flavor to the product as well. And it gives you a little bit of carbon dioxide and CO2. So it kind of gets it, the yeast kind of pushes it along its way to become a final packaged beer.